Hello, BookTube. As I feared, obstacles from the hated real world are going to interfere with our nonstop gab fest here on this channel. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make my usual barrage of videos for my imaginary BookTube friends on what has to be the strangest BookTube channel of them all, maybe the strangest YouTube channel of them all. I was thinking about this just this morning. I do not understand what we're doing here. I really don't. Just one weird old guy making a barrage of boring videos every day, and a whole bunch of you really enjoying it, and me enjoying it too. I'm just assuming that the answer is Frida, that she is the reason for the season. But anyway, I'm not going to be able to make a barrage of videos. No reading to you today. No Steve streams or nothing like that. I have a lot to report on the writing front. It's going to have to wait until I don't feel like my auditory masterpieces might be interrupted at any moment. So we'll just go through the mail. I got one periodical today with a fantastic cover, a cover that's long overdue. I'm amazed I haven't seen it before. And two very interesting letters that I want to share with you. This is the cover. There is Eustace Tilley. The title is Online Profile. The artist here is Nicholas Conrad, and the title is Online Profile. Of course, this is the New Yorker's most famous profile. This is their, I guess you could say, their mascot. He is an avatar of an earlier age. The monocle, the top hat, the huge collar and cravat. These were the swells when this magazine first came out, and Eustace Tilley became sort of an icon of theirs. But there are two letters that I want to read to you. I think we only have three letters this time around. Yes, we have three letters, but two of them I want to read to you because they are thought-provoking. I'll wonder what you think of them. The first one is from Florida. Reading E. Tammy Kim's article about drug decriminalization efforts in Oregon, I was reminded that addiction treatment is the only area of healthcare in which we consider saving someone's life to be an unacceptable outcome. As a society, we would find it morally repugnant to withhold care from someone with a chronic and life-threatening medical condition simply because they did not adhere completely to their treatment. Yet, despite all the evidence that harm reduction services can help drug users, we continue to debate such programs' merits and resist their implementation on the basis of the false notion that we are quote-unquote enabling people's drug habits. After 35 years in recovery and a life spent trying to create pathways out of addiction for others, including as the director of the Office of National Drug Control Policy under President Obama, I can only conclude that Americans fundamentally believe that people who suffer from addiction are morally flawed and somehow don't deserve all the help that we can give them. That is pretty fascinating. It raises a whole bunch of questions. And obviously, I think you can tell right from the beginning with that business about we consider saving someone's life to be an unacceptable outcome. The author of the letter is playing rhetorical dirty pool, loading all sorts of presuppositions into the points that he's making. It isn't. I'm curious to know if there is a moral element involved, a moral element of judgment involved in the whole stigma of drug addiction in the United States. I have a feeling that there is. What I'm not convinced of is whether or not it's warranted. If there's an element of choice involved, then there's an element of morality involved. It seems to me. There is no element involved in pancreatic cancer. None whatsoever. So when the author of the letter says, as a society, we would find it morally repugnant to withhold care from someone with a chronic or life-threatening medical condition simply because they did not adhere completely to their treatment. That's true. We would find that morally repugnant. But let's say someone had, pancreatic cancer. Let's say they had pancreatic cancer. And let's say there were the small fraction of people who can be saved from that cancer, it can go into remission, sometimes does that on its own. It's a deadly and fast-acting cancer. But I don't know what's on my mind. We'll just choose that. Let's say they did that they had, or let's say liver cancer. The person has liver cancer, and they fight a long, complicated, and expensive battle. They can't afford it, so it's subsidized care. Which I guess means, according to this rabble-rousing letter writer, I guess third or fourth cousin, somewhere twice or fifth time removed, you and I are paying for it, but I think that's so attenuated. Better to say the Pentagon is paying for it, but let's say that a person contracts liver cancer through no fault of their own, no alcohol, no alcohol abuse, no nothing like that. They just contract liver cancer. And they go through that long process of expensive treatment, and they are cured. And when they are in the parking lot of the hospital leaving from their cure, they are presented with a button that they can press to get liver cancer again. All of society, all of us are pulling for that person when they are struggling with this cancer. And I am sure that all of you, certainly I, am looking at that struggle and saying, well, if it's a choice between you taking a hundredth of a penny out of my pocket, all of our pockets collectively, to save this person's life, then absolutely do it. If they can't afford it, we're not going to sit around as a society and watch them die. All of us would say that. And I believe that if that patient walked out in the parking lot and hit the button to contract liver cancer again, no one would say yes. No one would. Even if it is a hundredth of a penny, I certainly wouldn't, and I have a feeling that most of you, decent people as you are until the day is long, would say, no, no, not at all. I don't care if it's an insignificant amount of money. I don't believe that anyone should subsidize this. This is a choice. It wasn't a choice the first time. It's a choice the second time, so, good luck. But you're not getting any help from any of us. And there is no way, except in unbelievably rare instances where children are born with substance addictions because their mothers were active substance abusers during pregnancy. Aside from isolated examples like that, adults, ordinary people, are not born with addiction. At some point or other, choice enters into it, and that means that at some point or other it is a moral decision. At some point or other it has a moral element. At some point or other it renders itself different from glaucoma or liver cancer or a broken bone. At some point it renders itself different from that. So when the author of this letter is saying we should do everything we can to help these, deserve all the help that we can give them, well, what do you mean by help? I guess, is what I'm asking. The author of this letter is also turning I imagine, considering the job that he had in the Obama administration, a willful blind eye to the fact that there is rampant abuse. That a lot of drug addicts don't want help or actively walk away from it even when you make it easy and readily available. And I'm not going to go down the dark alley of pointing out that the actual biomedical science of what addiction is pretty tough to parse. But the literature that I've read, and some of it has been staggeringly complex, well above my pay grade, the literature that I've read leads me to suspect that at no point anywhere in its case history is it actually comparable to contracting brain cancer, or having a broken leg, having a piano fall on you, or something like that. To me, the research that I have seen that is not swayed, that is not ideological, that is not drum beating like this letter writer is, certainly does not suggest that drug addiction, if it is a disease, is the kind of disease that simply black and white happens to you. Like all the other things that I'm talking about, they just happen to you. Whereas drug addiction, seems to me there is a moral element involved. It doesn't mean no pity, but it does mean that it's not the same thing as the authors. What does he say? The only area of healthcare in which we consider saving someone's life to be an unacceptable outcome. First of all, we don't consider that. No one thinks that. But also, second, it's not like other areas of healthcare. A person who's wheeled into the OR because their small intestine has ruptured did not choose that, would never choose that, will never consider dicing up and mixing their follow-up medication with carpet cleaner and selling it. They won't consider any of that. No one will think of any of that. It's not the same. It's not exactly the same. The people who raise, not the villains that are suggested in this letter, but the people who raise issues, who say, well, I don't know. Does this person want help? They don't seem like they want help. And that person is not completely out of bounds. They are not just a monster. They are not saying, well, we consider saving your life too high a price to pay. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting subject for me. And then there's the second letter, which is also very interesting, for especially you fans of Gone with the Wind who've had to hide in the shrubbery for the last 30 years, or the last 20 years, as we've entered into the 21st century of censor culture. This letter is aimed at your persecutors, I believe. This is from Decatur, Georgia, fittingly enough. Louis Menand's piece on the current state of intellectual property and the field's wide range of rights and gripes was informative and insightful. Actually do kind of agree with that. It was a pretty good piece. However, one parenthetical seemed like an unfair characterization. Menand discusses the copyright infringement case involving the 2001 retelling of Margaret Mitchell's Gone with the Wind from the perspective of a black character in the author Alice Randall's The Wind Done Gone. I remember that controversy. I was working in a retail bookstore at the time, and we had customers wanting to know if we were going to carry the book. We even had a couple of people calling anonymously and saying that they would be very unhappy that they might pick at the store if we did. And when I got those phone calls, this was in the era before the so-called superstores, when there was no top-down management of every employee's thought and word. So when I got those calls, I said, well, you're barking up the wrong tree. You're actually in the wrong country. If you think that a brand new release is getting really wildly hyped, we're not going to carry just because you think it might be offensive. We carry the Anarchist Cookbook up on the second floor, and we're certainly going to carry this book. And in my mind, I was thinking, well, you would defend the choice to stock it anyway, but it'll be really good if it's good. And it wasn't. The Wind Done Gone is not good. That complicated the issue for me. For the people who had made up their mind about it didn't. But anyway, Menand describes the outcome, a peculiar outcome, in which Randall's publisher agreed to make a contribution to Morehouse College. That's a traditionally black college, a very good school. He then adds that it was, quote, as though the estate of the author of Gone with the Wind were somehow the party that stood for improving the life chances of black Americans. And Menand is making that point to poke at Margaret Mitchell and Gone with the Wind. He's saying that that idea, that what was it again? The estate of the author of Gone with the Wind were somehow a party that stood for improving the life choices of black Americans. He raised that in his piece as an absurd possibility. He's joking at that idea, obviously, because why? Because be better. You've got to be better, because we've all been told for the last 20 years that Gone with the Wind is an irreparably racist book and that you're a racist if you like it. Whereas, only one of those two things is true. Gone with the Wind is an incredibly racist book, but that does not make you a racist if you like it. It's also an incredibly enthralling book. It's amazing storytelling. You have to take the good with the bad. As an adult, I'm preaching to the choir here, because all of you, somehow I have stumbled into a viper's nest of actual three-dimensional, complex, nuanced readers. There aren't many of them. I'm thinking they're all here. But the author of the letter goes on with a riposte that I think you Gone with the Wind fans are going to like. A response to that snarky quote from Menand. In fact, Mitchell's estate's direction of funds to Morehouse more than 50 years after her death was far from peculiar. It was consistent with Mitchell's own financial support of the college beginning in 1942. The funds that Mitchell donated were earmarked for scholarships, mostly for medical and dental students, owing to Mitchell's concerns about the poor quality of health care then available to black Americans. I read that. I have to confess. I mean, Gone with the Wind is not one of my favorite books, but I know that it is the favorite book of a lot of you. And I read that letter with a smile on my face. All I could think about were the puritanical blue checkmark Twitter scold bots in the last 20 years who said that you're a bad person, you're on the wrong side of history if you like this book. If you have it on your shelf, we're going to leave a comment on your BookTube video saying you're a bad person. And on, all the way down the line. I'm sure if you're a big Gone with the Wind fan, you've encountered it already. When I finished that letter, all I could do was smile and ask the simple question, how many of those blue check marks have ever donated funds to Morehouse College? Much less endowed scholarships. Anyway, I thought those were two fascinating letters. And now we'll do the packages. Now that I've thrown hand grenades into the discussion, we'll do the packages and then we'll be done. We have one package and one box. But the box is not eating its Wheaties. It's not nearly as big or as heavy as yesterday's box. It could not be anywhere near as good as yesterday's box. These things have been right beside me the whole time. I thought about showering with it, but I'm not sure that would be good for the book. For those of you who are tuning in late, I got 2 volumes on the Taft Court yesterday in a great big box. One of the 2 teas that I am waiting for. this other little box cannot possibly be the other T that I'm waiting for. I'm kind of amazed that no one has picked up on what that other T is. I said Taft was one of them, and I said there's another T out there that I'm waiting for, and it will be big. And one of you emailed me and said, as soon as I heard that, I went looking on Amazon to see if there are any big new biographies of Tolstoy coming out, or maybe a new edition of Tolstoy, something like that. There's another T that I'm rather fond of. But anyway, what do we got here? Oh, yes, okay. I think I heard about this from the publicist. I think I remember this. This is Farnsworth's Classical English Argument from the folks at Godine Press. And there we have me and Deb arguing, as always. Let's see what we have here. Learn how to argue from the masters. This book is a complete course on the art of argument, taught by the greatest practitioners of it, Churchill, Lincoln, and hundreds of others from the golden age of debate in England and America. The concise chapters provide lessons in all aspects of give and take, the syllogism and the slippery slope, the argumentum ad hominem, the reductio ad absurdum, the fallacy, and the insult. Ward Farnsworth shows how the full range of such techniques can be used or repelled, and illustrates them with examples that are fascinating, instructive, and fun to read. Farnsworth's classical English argument. Every page is a pleasure in this browsable volume. It will leave you better able to win arguments and defend yourself under fire. It's also an entertaining reminder that argument can be a source of beauty and delight. Also bloodshed. As Farnsworth says of hundreds of quotations, they show talented advocates crossing analytical swords and exchanging abuse when those things were done with more talent and dignity than is common today. They made argument a spectator sport of lasting value and insult as well, I'm sure. This book is the fourth book in a series highlighting the ideas and methods embedded in the best speech and writing of an earlier time. So this follows up Farnsworth's Classical English Rhetoric, Farnsworth's Classical English Metaphor, and Farnsworth's Classical English Style, which the Wall Street Journal called original and absorbing. Okay, well, this comes out in April. This is going to be a $29 hardcover. I assume a hardcover. Yes, a $29 hardcover. And that's what this is. It's just the text and the author's own annotations of the best ways to argue. That's going to be kind of fascinating. I don't tend to throw myself into argument when it's in private, because there's too much of a chance that it will spoil the evening. I love a good convivial evening, a nice, long, convivial evening. I love it more than anything. Some of you, handful of you, maybe more by the time the year is out, have experienced that in person. I love nothing better than to have people or one person over here at Hyde Cottage break out the wine and calzones, just chat all night long about books and reading and everything else in the world. And I try, in the course of those engagements, not to have arguments break out. For one main reason. This is because that's private. When an argument breaks out in public, when I have, in other words, an audience, well, then I'm rather fond of it. And also rather good at it in a way that anyone who's ever done it will pipe up right away and say that all of those technical things, those fallacies and all that this book brings up are almost completely immaterial when you're arguing in public, when you are doing a public debate. A public debate is all about destroying your enemy by getting the audience on your side. It doesn't even matter how good a job you do, or how much right you have on your side, or anything like that. It has nothing to do with any of the actual rhetorical Aristotelian components of argument. It's something else. It's performance. And I love it. I love it to distraction. But I don't. That in a case like that, I would make as sure as I possibly could not to do that with a friend. Because if I have my way, there's not going to be anything left. If I have the proper goal of an argument in public, of a public debate, is not to win the debate. It's to have the audience laughing uproariously at your opponent. Not just during the debate, but every time they see the person. That from then on after, I want them to remember at least one choice singer. Maybe call it out across the campus. You don't want to do that to a friend. So this will be exploring the technicalities of argument that I've read. There have been a million books like that going all the way back to Aristotle and to Cicero. This will be fun to do. I'm not sure that I've read any of the other Farnsworth volumes. I'm coming late to this party, I think. But then we have the box. And It's smaller than yesterday's box. It's probably a finished copy of something that we've already seen. This cannot possibly be the other tea that I'm waiting for. The other tea that I'm waiting for, if I get it, it's going to be immense. So, it's not going to be this, whatever it is. Oh, okay. All right, great. This is a forthcoming collection. Not a collection. This is a forthcoming biography. It's a great big biography. This is, it's going to be $40. It's going to be 700 pages long. So this was in a box because it's really big. It would probably have burst its way out of an envelope. Okay. This is by Michael Knott, and it is a big biography of Tom Gunn. A Cool Queer Life. That, in case you can't make out the detail, that is a muscular teenager taking a picture there on the cover. Okay, so this comes out in late June. The publication of Gunn's letters in 2022 led to something of a Gunn. Period. Okay, I don't have a pencil near me, but I want to circle that. That is a typo. That should be in Renaissance, Revival, whatever. There's a word missing there. Now, Michael Knott, one of the editors of the collected letters, has written a biography that puts the letters and poems into the context of Gunn's life and offers up the story of a life that is at once exemplary and emblematic. All right, somewhere in the pits of hell, Tom Gunn is laughing his head off that someone has called his life story exemplary. Throughout his life, Gunn's image was ever-shifting, or at least bifurcated between the shores of the Atlantic. In Britain, for much of his career, Gunn was identified with the movement poets, that plain-spoken group of formal poets prominent in the 50s and beyond that included Larkin and others, and Ted Hughes. This was where Gunn made his name, and the Gunn of those first few collections interested in the pose, leather jackets, Elvis, stylistically formal, semi-Elizabethan, enigmatically impersonal, predominated the British understanding of his work. The jokes just write themselves. I'm just gonna press on here, although that's funny too. And there was also the American Gunn, the Gunn who settled in the Bay Area, studied with Ivor Winters, and came to appreciate the baggier, modernist, and Black Mountain school poets who would influence the San Francisco Renaissance. It was also in America that Gunn would take part in the burgeoning counterculture and queer scenes, especially those of the West Coast. Are you implying that he did not take part in those scenes in the UK? It depends on what you mean by take part, I guess. So on that side of the Atlantic, he was a monk. Probably an exemplary one. Here, Gunn would write his most famous book, The Man with Night Sweats, which we've read on this channel, a response to the AIDS crisis, part elegy and part meditation. Michael Knott's biography offers a new avenue of appreciation for Gunn's work, and also connects Gunn to the many other poets and writers whom he knew, including the likes of Ted Hughes and Robert Duncan. You're not going to name one other name. That's okay. There's a bit of an omission there, but at least not a typo. And also the figures who made up the flourishing of artistic and queer life in San Francisco in the second half of the 20th century. Okay, it's in the title. It's been in this pub sheet 3 times. That queer is there instead of gay, right? That I'm assuming that's what I'm being browbeaten with here, is that queer is there instead of gay. So maybe it's bigoted to be gay now. It's like, and the author captures the tone and texture of Gunn's life, an indispensable book for those interested in 20th century English and American poetry. Okay, that's a mistake as well. The author not captures the tone and texture of Gunn's life, semicolon. Okay. Semicolon separates 2 things that can stand alone as sentences, but that are so conjoined subject-wise that they deserve to be the same in the same sentence. 2 parts of the same sentence. But an indispensable book for those interested in 20th century English and American poetry is not a standalone line. It's not a complete sentence. So it's easy to do. You just take out your pencil and change that. Not captures the tone and texture of Gunn's life, comma, making this an indispensable book for those interested. That's it. You fixed it. But the semicolon doesn't belong there. But anyway, I'm going to have to write to the publicist and ask if I can get a copy of that letter collection from 2022. I wonder if there's a copy of that in the warehouse. I'm going to need that, I think, to do this, and I don't think I still have it. I don't think I do. There was someone who didn't get a finished copy, that wanted it more than I did. Sorry, this is throwing me for a loop. This whole thing is throwing me for a loop. So who is the author? He's the author of Photo Poetry, a critical history, and an editor of the Letters of Tom Gunn. He was a Fulbright Fellow at the University of California, Berkeley, and a postdoctoral fellow at the University of College Cork, and he lives in England. Oh my God, they give a little bio note for Tom Gunn. It's only 3 lines long. Tom Gunn, 1929 to 2004. Was educated at Cambridge University and wrote his first collection of poems, Fighting Terms, in 1954, while he was still an undergraduate. He moved to Northern California in 1954 and taught at American universities until his death. Okay, well, I'm gonna need to see about that letter collection. I'm almost positive that I know that I got rid of the finished copy. I'm pretty sure that I got rid of the review copy as well. Okay, well there you go. So this is worth notating because it's a big fat biography. It's a big fat biography. And I love big fat biographies. Biography is my favorite genre. The bigger, the better. And this comes out in the summer. A no holds barred. God, the jokes just write themselves. A no hold barred biography of Tom Gunn, a great poet and sexual rebel who could, quote, give the dead a voice, make them sing. That's a quote from Hilton Als in The New Yorker. Okay. Boy, I would not have chosen this cover. But I guess, some of you have better design sense than I do. That is at least a very interesting cover. Right? Don't mind the smudge there. That is not part of the cover. There's no snot hanging from his nose. It's a very interesting cover. I don't like the political signaling that queer seems to replace the word gay here. I don't like that. I'm hoping that is not true in the course of the book. I'm hoping that that's not this year's enslaved person or unhoused person. I really, really am hoping that. We will see. But this is, it's striking. I don't know. Ordinarily in a big fat biography, the more striking the cover, the better. These things have an uphill battle. No one likes to read 700-page biographies, or very few people do. But in this case, I would have liked a picture of a very young poet. I guess the choice was made. It's not a bad choice. It's not a bad cover, so I can't really object to it. Okay, so there's a big 700-page biography of you coming out in the summer. All right, so we've got Tom Gunn, A Cool Queer Life, and Farnsworth's Classical English Argument. How's that for a pairing? For the Mail, plus The New Yorker, which not only raises questions about what drug addiction actually is and what you think of it as. Someone walks into a methadone clinic, begs for help, then goes outside and sells his methadone. How much compassion does that person need from us? How much does that person warrant? And also, the obvious elephant in the room, the point that obviously doesn't need making, is that people volunteer to addict themselves to drugs. That's how 99.9% of drug addictions happen. One day you weren't a drug addict, and then for whatever reason, whether you're weak and self-pitying, or you've got such a weak self-image that you want to impress all the dumbest people around you, or want to fit in, or whatever, but it's a conscious choice. You make a conscious choice to do it. In a way that you certainly don't make a conscious choice to have rheumatism. That was fascinating, and also Margaret Mitchell, here's hoping. It's against hope. It will never happen. But here's hoping that the writer from Georgia is working on a biography of Margaret Mitchell. It would be the kind of biography of her that is badly needed. And the reason it wouldn't happen is that who would publish it? Who would publish it? The blue checkmark censors that we have allowed power over our lives already know what they think about Margaret Mitchell. They wouldn't allow a biography that mentions her giving money to a black college. No, not in a million years. She's the devil. We shall see. Anyway, that was 2 letters and 2 books. So I'll wrap this up for now. I'm afraid this is going to be it. These 30 minutes of my pearls of wisdom and my weirdness. I know that last book was weird. We'll just have to roll with it. That's all. This is going to have to be it. I can feel just hovering in the air the possibility of interruption, of workmen, and other things too. The whole day has been a little foreboding. No wonder the Bean and I have been taking so many walks where I don't have to think about it. On one of our walks today, we came across a gigantic Bernese mountain dog. Oh my God, you could have lost Frida in his fur. And he was so happy to see her. Oh, he was so happy to see her. And she was all stiff. And she makes this preliminary buzzing noise. It sounds exactly like a tiny little beehive. She's not buzzing at them. She makes a tiny little buzzing noise to herself, preparatory to determining whether or not she's going to scream. And when we got close, the dog's owner she weighed less than he did. He weighed 200 pounds if he was an ounce. She was asking, the usual questions, is your dog friendly? Can they meet each other? And I said, yes, she is friendly. It's not going to seem that way, but she is. She's not unfriendly. I usually say that. She's not unfriendly. She'll bark, maybe. She might scream, but she won't bite. Under any circumstances, she won't do that. It's just she's like that with other dogs. Most owners get that. They figure if a smiling old guy, an obviously friendly old guy, is letting his dog near your dog, then it's probably not any trouble. It's probably not a psychopath. So we got closer, and the Bernese mountain dog was flopping all around because he was so happy to see Frida, and that was all it took for her to scream at him to, get in line. And he stopped a little, and he said, "Why is little friend so angry?" And I had to tell him, "Oh, baby boy, she doesn't like your hair, she doesn't like your clothes, she doesn't like your rock and roll music. Come and smooch with me." And he did. He stood up. He put his paws on my shoulder and his face in my face. He was as tall as I was. And his owner was pulling at his leash the whole time, just shocked and amazed that he was up on top of me, because he's been clearly trained not to do that. And I know that. I asked him to do it. No one else is going to be able to ask him to do it in the way that I asked him to do it. No other 2-legged person on earth can make that request in the way that I did. So he's not breaking his training. It's never going to happen with anybody else. But we smooched elaborately while Frida was dancing all around, incandescent with rage that he was smooching with me. And then we parted ways. And when we got back here, I had the Bean up on the couch here, and I looked at her tiny little face and said, "You're perfectly free to smooch with me." And she went, "No, maybe later." But in between those dog walks, I've had this foreboding feeling. I think it's probably the possibility of being interrupted by workers, but every once in a while, there's a fugitive little penny drop here and there. Someone I haven't heard from in 15 years sent me an email this morning. Very nice, how you doing email. Nothing wrong with that. I always love that. But as a little too casual an afternote, the person asked, "Oh, by the way, I have your mailing address. I think I have something you might like." Of course, I gave him my mailing address, but I don't know. It's probably nothing. It's probably nothing. He doesn't watch this channel. I'm sure he doesn't know this channel exists. So he doesn't know about rule number 1, which is don't send me a book. So maybe he'll send me a book. Who knows? Maybe he will. It's no big deal either way. I'm not sure I won't have any contact with him, but it was weird. I don't like it when fate knocks on the door. I don't like that at all. I like just my calm, placid life. The only interruptions I want here are for people to come and visit me, because I'm a lonely old shut-in. So I want people to come and visit me all year long. The visits have been too slow to start. I realize it's winter, but the visits have been too slow to start. People need to start coming and visiting Steve. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up for now. Sorry about that, but I'll be back. I'm hoping that we'll be back in fine, garrulous form tomorrow. I'm hoping that this will take any longer than that. So here's hoping for that. I will wrap this up for now. Hopefully I'll see you many times tomorrow. Thank you, BookTube.